The year is 2023. The office is on the 48th floor. Glass walls overlook the city. Sunlight glints off 1,000 windows. A young man named Kevin stares at a screen. He is a logistics analyst for a global shipping conglomerate. He is looking at a request for proposal, a contract worth $90 million a year. A bid has come in that makes no sense. The name on the bid is Thompson Freight, a private company. Family-owned, the file says, based out of rural Ohio. Kevin looks at their numbers. Their on-time delivery rate is 99.8%. Impossible for a fleet of that size. Their deadhead mileage is under 3%. Also impossible. Their proposed rate undercuts everyone by 12%, while using newer equipment, and paying drivers 20% above the industry average. The math does not work. It cannot work. He picks up the phone. He calls his director, a man named Marcus Thorne. Marcus has been in logistics for 40 years. He's seen everything. Kevin speaks quickly. "Sir, you need to look at the Thompson bid. It's either fraudulent or it's revolutionary." There is a long pause on the other end of the line. Marcus says one word. "Thompson?" "Yes, sir. Thompson Freight." Marcus is silent. Kevin can hear him typing, the soft click of keys over the phone. Marcus says, "Read me the CEO's name." Kevin clicks a tab. Clara May Thompson. The silence stretches. Kevin thinks the line has gone dead. He says, "Sir?" Marcus finally speaks. His voice is different, softer. "I knew her father. He ran 2 trucks out of a dirt lot, 2 Peterbilt 359s from the 70s, always broken down. He died young, heart attack, left the business to his daughter. She couldn't have been more than a kid." Kevin listens. This is not the story he expected. Marcus continues. "A lot of people told her to sell, told her she couldn't make it, told her it was no life for a girl. I want you to pull up the incorporation date." Kevin types, 1987. Marcus lets out a slow breath. 36 years. He says it to himself, not to Kevin. Then he speaks to the analyst again. "Kevin, that bid is not fraudulent. Award them the contract. And send a note with it. Tell her Marcus Thorne says congratulations. Tell her he was wrong. This channel is for stories like that. The stories that get lost between the lines of a balance sheet. The stories of people who were told no, who were told they couldn't, who were told they were too young, too old, too different, and who spent the next 30 years proving it, quietly, without an audience. If you believe those stories need to be told, subscribe to this channel. Because what happened in that dirt lot in 1987 changed more than just one life. Let me tell you the story of Clara May Thompson. It begins with a death, as so many stories do. Her father, Jack Thompson, was a good man, a trucker's trucker. He knew the roads. He knew the engines. He did not know finances. He drove hard. He lived hard. He died at 49. Leaving behind a mountain of debt, 2 aging trucks, and a 19-year-old daughter, Clara May. She had her father's hands, calloused and capable. She had her mother's eyes, quiet and observant. The funeral was small. Truckers and mechanics stood in the back of the church, their hands clasped awkwardly. They offered condolences, and they offered advice. "Sell the business, honey. Jack ran it on fumes for years. You don't want this headache. It's a tough world out here." They meant well, every single one of them. They saw a girl, 19 years old, grieving, alone. They wanted to protect her, from the debt, from the struggle, from the world they knew so well. A world of diesel fumes and greasy diners, of blown tires on lonely highways at 3 a.m., of dispatchers who lied and brokers who cheated. It was not a world for her, They were certain. Certainty is a powerful thing, more powerful than malice. Cruelty can be fought. It gives you anger. It gives you fuel. But what do you do with kindness? What do you do with genuine concern? Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend, by someone who truly believed they were helping you. It is the loneliest kind of opposition, because you cannot fight it with rage. You can only fight it with your life, with decades of work. Clara listened to their advice. She nodded. She said thank you. She did not argue. She went back to the small office, a trailer sitting on cinder blocks next to the garage. The phone was ringing. A customer needed a load picked up, a critical load of machine parts, headed for a factory in Michigan. If the parts didn't get there, the assembly line would shut down. The contract was one of her father's last. It was a good-paying run, money she desperately needed to pay the funeral costs, to keep the lights on. One of her father's 2 drivers was there, a man named Gus O'Malley. Gus was 55 years old. He had driven for her father for 10 years. He was respected, a deacon at his church, coached Little League for 2 decades. Everyone agreed Gus was a good man. He saw Clara walk in. His face was a mask of sympathy. "Clara," he said, "I heard about the load. I'll take it. For your dad." She felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, Gus." She pulled out the paperwork, the bill of lading, the legal document that detailed the type, quantity, and destination of the goods, a contract between the shipper and the carrier. She picked up a pen to sign it. As the carrier, as the new owner of Thompson Freight, Gus put his hand over hers, gently. His hand was large and warm. "Now, hold on a minute, little lady." His voice was kind, fatherly. "You can't sign that." Clara looked at him, confused. "Why not? I'm the owner now." Gus shook his head slowly. He sighed, the way a parent does with a child. "It's not that simple. This is a legal document. You're 19 years old. You don't have the authority. You don't have the experience. If something goes wrong with this load, if there's an accident, the insurance won't cover it if your name is on here. The shipper's lawyers will eat you alive." He was so sure, so reasonable. Every word he said sounded like practical wisdom. It sounded like protection. Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "But the company is in my name. The lawyer filed the papers this morning." Gus nodded. "I know, and that was a mistake. He should have advised you to liquidate. Listen to me, Clara. I've been driving this route since before you were born. I knew your father. I respected him, but he was barely holding on. This business is a sinking ship. Let me help you." He leaned forward. His voice dropped. "I'll buy the trucks. I'll give you a fair price. More than fair. I'll take over the debts. You can walk away clean. Go to college. Be a kid. This is not your burden to carry." He smiled, a kind, reassuring smile. He believed he was saving her. He was offering her an escape. He was offering her a cage built of kindness. Clara looked from his smiling face, to the bill of lading on the desk, to the pen in her hand. She felt something shift inside her. The grief was still there, but now it had a hard edge. She looked him in the eye. "My name is on the company. My name goes on the manifest." Gus's smile faded. The kindness in his eyes hardened into pity. "I can't let you do that, Clara. I won't be a party to it. I'm not taking this truck off the lot. Not with your signature on that paper. It's for your own good." He stood up. He was a big man. He filled the small office. "Think about my offer. It's the right thing to do. For everyone." He turned and walked out, leaving her alone in the trailer, with the silent phone and the unsigned paper. The load had to be picked up in 3 hours, or the contract was void. The other driver had already quit that morning. He had a family to feed. He couldn't risk working for a 19-year-old girl. She had 2 trucks, one with a bad injector, one with a driver who refused to drive, and a bill of lading that needed a signature. She was alone, utterly and completely alone. She sat there for a long time. The sounds of the highway outside seemed distant. The world was moving on without her. She thought about his offer. It was a clean way out. No more debt, no more struggle. She could just stop. No one would blame her. In fact, they would praise her for being sensible, for being smart. She picked up the pen. She looked at the line that said, "Carrier signature." Then she put the pen down. She walked out of the trailer, locked the door behind her, and drove the 10 miles to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother, Eleanor, was 70 years old, the daughter of a farmer, the wife of a mechanic, the mother of a trucker. She understood men who worked with their hands. She was sitting at her kitchen table, snapping green beans into a metal bowl. The sound was rhythmic, comforting. Clara sat down opposite her. She didn't cry. She just told her the story, in a flat, even voice. What Gus had said, what he had offered, how he had refused to take the load. Her grandmother listened. She did not interrupt. She just kept snapping the beans. Snap, click, drop. When Clara was finished, the silence hung in the warm kitchen. Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron. She looked at her granddaughter. Her eyes were clear, not angry, not sad, just clear. She said, "Your grandfather could fix any engine ever made, but he couldn't read a blueprint. Your father could drive a truck through a blizzard blindfolded, but he couldn't balance a checkbook. Every man has a blind spot. Gus O'Malley is a good man, a good driver, but he sees the world through his own windshield, and that is all he sees." Eleanor leaned forward. She reached across the table and took Clara's hands. Her skin was like paper, but her grip was strong. "Your father was not a good businessman, but he taught you how to read a manifest. He taught you that the numbers had to match. The weight, the pallet count, the seal number. He always said the same thing. People will lie to you. Engines will break on you. The weather will turn on you. But the manifest doesn't lie." Clara looked at her grandmother's face and saw the answer. It was not about anger. It was not about proving Gus wrong. It was about the work. It was about the simple, honest truth of the numbers on a page. The manifest doesn't lie. Eleanor let go of her hands. She pushed the bowl of beans aside. "Now, you have a load to pick up. That injector on the number 2 truck. Is it a Cummins or a Cat?" Clara stared at her. "A Cummins." Eleanor nodded. "Your grandfather left his tools in the barn. Let's go. We have work to do." And that's how it began. Not with a speech, not with a dramatic confrontation, but in a dusty barn, with the smell of old oil and rust. A 70-year-old woman and a 19-year-old girl, taking apart a diesel engine. They worked under a single bare bulb. Eleanor's hands, though wrinkled, were steady. She pointed to the parts. She named them. She showed Clara how they fit together, how to listen for the right sounds, how to feel for the right tension on a bolt. They didn't talk much. They just worked. The language they spoke was one of wrenches and gaskets, of torque and timing. 3 hours later, the injector was fixed. Clara's hands were black with grease. She had a cut on her knuckle. She had never felt more alive. She drove the truck back to the office. She walked into the trailer. She picked up the pen, and she signed the bill of lading. Clara May Thompson. The ink was dark and certain on the page. She faxed a copy to the shipper. Then she climbed into the cab of the Peterbilt. The engine turned over with a deep rumble. She put it in gear and pulled out of the dirt lot, onto the highway. She drove all night, fueled by coffee and a cold fury she didn't know she had. She delivered the machine parts to the factory in Michigan with 1 hour to spare. The factory foreman looked at her, a kid, a girl, climbing out of a massive truck. He looked at the manifest. He looked at her signature. He just grunted and signed for the load. She got back in the truck and drove home. When she pulled into the lot, Gus O'Malley's car was there. He was standing by the office trailer. He looked at the truck. He looked at her. His face was unreadable. "You took the load." It wasn't a question. "Yes." He shook his head, still convinced he was right. "That was a foolish risk, Clara. You got lucky this time, but luck runs out." She didn't answer. She just walked past him into the office. He called after her. "My offer still stands when you're ready to be sensible." She closed the door. That was the last time they spoke for 30 years. Let me tell you about the next 30 years. They were not easy. The first year she lived in the office trailer, a hot plate for a kitchen, a cot for a bed. She drove during the day, did the books at night. She learned every part of the business: dispatch, accounting, maintenance, sales. She sold the second truck to pay off the most urgent debts. 1 truck, 1 driver, herself. She took the jobs no one else wanted, the LTL shipments, less than truckload, partial loads, complicated routes, multiple stops. The big companies hated them. Not enough profit, too much hassle. But for Clara, they were a lifeline. She became an expert in logistics, in finding the perfect route to combine 3 different partial loads into 1 profitable run. Her father's voice was in her head. The manifest doesn't lie. The numbers have to match. She applied that to everything: fuel costs, maintenance schedules, driver hours. Everything was a number. Everything had to add up. By 1990, she had paid off all her father's debts. She owned the truck free and clear. She had $5,000 in the bank, cash. She bought her second truck, a used Kenworth W900. She paid for it in full, cash. She needed a driver. The local men wouldn't work for her. A girl boss? They laughed at the truck stop. So she hired a woman, a single mother from the next town over. Brenda was in her 40s. She had her CDL, but no one would give her a chance. Clara did. Now there were 2 of them, 2 trucks, 2 women, taking the jobs the men didn't want. They were a joke to some, an oddity to others, but their customers didn't care. Their customers cared that the loads arrived on time, every time. The manifest doesn't lie. By 1995, Thompson Freight had 6 trucks and 6 drivers, all women. Clara designed a new dispatch system. Using a simple database program on a desktop computer, it optimized routes in a way no one else was doing. She was cutting deadhead miles to almost nothing, while the big companies were still using maps and pins on a wall. She bought a bigger piece of land, paved it, built a real garage with 3 bays, paid for it all with money she earned, cash. Gus O'Malley saw it. He drove past her new facility every day on his way to the co-op he worked for. He saw the new trucks, the fresh paint on the building, the steady hum of activity. He told himself she was just lucky, that it wouldn't last, that she would make a mistake. He was a good man, a respected man. He could not be wrong about her. It was impossible. His certainty was a wall he had built around himself. And on the other side of that wall, Clara Mae Thompson was building an empire. The years clicked by like mile markers on the interstate. 2000. 20 trucks. A new, larger office building. She hired a full-time dispatch team, a full-time mechanic. She started offering health insurance and a 401k, unheard of for a small company. Her drivers were loyal. They were the best in the business. Thompson Freight became a brand. It stood for reliability. If Thompson took the load got there. Period. The manifest doesn't lie. 2008. The financial crisis hit. Trucking companies were going bankrupt left and right. The big carriers were leveraged to the hilt. They had massive truck loans, massive debt. They started folding. Thompson Freight had no debt. Clara had never borrowed $1. Every truck, every building, every wrench in the garage was paid for. Cash. While other companies were laying off drivers, she was buying their assets. For pennies on the dollar. She bought trucks. She bought trailers. She bought terminals in 3 different states, all with her own money. Cash. By 2015, she had a fleet of over 200 trucks. She was a major regional player. That was the year the co-op Gus O'Malley had worked for his whole life went under. Mismanaged for decades. Too much debt. Too slow to adapt. It went up for auction. Clara bought it. The entire company, the trucks, the name, the terminal where Gus used to park his rig. She paid for it in cash. She walked through the empty offices on the day she took possession. The place was a time capsule. Old calendars on the wall, rotary phones on the desks. She saw the dispatch board, still a map with pins in it. She thought about Gus. She hadn't seen him in years. She heard he had retired. She wondered if he knew that the company he gave his life to was now just a single line item on her balance sheet. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet, hollow ache. The cost of proving someone wrong. When they think they're being kind, it is the loneliest fight there is. Have you ever felt that? The quiet victory that no one else can see. The moment you realize you've won a battle no one else knew you were fighting. Let me know in the comments. Because what happened next wasn't about victory. It was about something else entirely. The years continued. The company grew. Clara was no longer a girl. She was a woman in her 50s. Her hair had threads of gray. Her hands, though still capable, were no longer covered in grease. She had a CEO. A board of directors. But she still walked the garage floor every morning. She knew her drivers by name, knew their families, knew their struggles. Her son, Jack, named after her father, was now the company's COO. He had her quiet determination and an MBA from Ohio State. He was the one pushing for the big national contracts, pushing to take the company to the next level. Which brings us back to 2023, to the $90 million contract, to an analyst named Kevin, and a director named Marcus Thorne, who remembered a girl in a dirt lot. The contract was signed. Thompson Freight went from a regional power to a national force. But that's not the end of the story. Because one Tuesday morning, an email landed in Clara's personal inbox. The subject line just said, "A request." The email was from Gus O'Malley. His words were stilted, formal. He wrote that his wife, Mary, was ill. She needed a series of specialized treatments at a clinic in another state. The treatments required equipment that had to be transported with her. A mobile, sterile environment. A job for a highly specialized truck. He had spent weeks calling every medical transport company he could find. None had the right equipment or the right permits. Finally, a doctor at the clinic told him there was one company, one freight carrier in the country, that had a new experimental division for just this kind of transport. A company called Thompson Freight. Gus wrote that his pension from the co-op had disappeared when the company folded. He had very little money, but he would pay whatever it cost. He would sign over his house. Anything. Please, can you help? Clara read the email 3 times. She looked out her office window, at the hundreds of trucks in the yard, each one bearing her family name. She thought of that day in the trailer office, the bill of lading. His kind, certain voice telling her she couldn't, for her own good. She could have said no. She could have had her assistant send a polite refusal. She could have forwarded the request to the medical division with a note to charge him the full, exorbitant rate. Any of those would have been justice, of a kind. But Clara wasn't interested in justice. She was interested in the manifest. She picked up her phone, and she called the number at the bottom of his email. He answered on the first ring. His voice was old, brittle. Gus O'Malley. She said, "Gus, this is Clara May Thompson." There was a long silence. She could hear him breathing, a ragged, shallow sound. He finally managed to speak. "Clara, I don't know what to say." She did not let him. "I got your email. I'm looking at the manifest for the transport right now. It lists 1 patient, Mary O'Malley, 1 set of medical equipment, destination, Cleveland. Is that correct?" Her voice was all business, crisp, factual. "Yes," he stammered. "That's correct." "Good," she said. "A truck will be at your house tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. It will be one of our best drivers, and I will be there as well, to personally supervise the loading." Gus was crying now. She could hear it. Soft, choked sounds. "Thank you," he whispered. "Clara, I can't tell you. I'll pay." She cut him off. Her voice was not unkind, but it was absolute. "Gus, the manifest doesn't lie. It says your wife gets to her appointment, on time and in good care. It says nothing on here about payment. There will be no charge." She hung up the phone before he could answer. The next morning, she was there. She watched as her team, efficient and professional, loaded the equipment. Gus stood on his porch, a stooped old man. He looked frail, defeated. He watched her, his eyes filled with a lifetime of regret. When everything was ready, Clara walked up to him. She handed him a piece of paper. It was the bill of lading for the trip. She pointed to a line at the bottom. "We need your signature here, Gus, as the shipper." He took the pen from her. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely write his name. He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "Why?" he asked. "After what I did, what I said, why are you doing this?" Clara looked at him, and for the first time she saw him not as a gatekeeper, not as an obstacle, but as a man who was trapped by his own certainty. A man who thought he was being good, and in doing so had done a great harm. She said, "Because you were wrong about me, Gus, but you were not wrong about my father. You were his friend. You respected him. This is for him, not for you or me. This is for Jack Thompson." She walked away, clot in her car, and followed the truck all the way to Cleveland to make sure the job was done right. The story of Thompson Freight did not end there. It grew, but it also changed. Clara May started the Thompson Freight Academy, a free training school for anyone who wanted to earn their CDL. She put a special emphasis on recruiting women, single mothers, people who needed a second chance, the same kind of chance she gave Brenda all those years ago. The Academy has graduated over 5,000 drivers to date. Every graduate gets a job offer from Thompson Freight, with full benefits, and a signing bonus. She created a scholarship fund for the children of her employees. It has sent hundreds of kids to college, kids who, like her, came from families that worked with their hands. Her son Jack now runs the day-to-day operations. He has expanded the company into logistics software, selling the system his mother designed on a desktop computer 30 years ago. It is now used by carriers all over the world. And Clara? She is semi-retired, but she still has her office. And on the wall, in a simple black frame, hangs a piece of paper. A bill of lading from 1987 for a load of machine parts headed to Michigan. At the bottom is the signature of a 19-year-old girl, written in defiant, certain ink. Sometimes her grandchildren come to visit the office. They ask her about the paper on the wall. They ask her why it's so important. She just smiles and tells them a story about their great-grandfather and about a lesson he taught her. The manifest doesn't lie. Right now, somewhere in the world, a young person is being told they can't. They are being told they are too young, too inexperienced, too different. And the person telling them this is not a monster. They are not a villain. They are a good person, a decent person, a person who is absolutely 100% certain that they are doing the right thing, that they are offering protection, that they are being kind. That is the most dangerous limitation in the world, the one you cannot see, the one you cannot fight with anger. The story of Clara Mae Thompson is a reminder that certainty is not the same as truth, and that the quiet, relentless application of work over decades is the only thing that can tear down a wall built of good intentions. If this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear that it's possible, share it with them. Thank you for listening.